The letter was written 68 years ago, but it felt like it was meant for me. I stood in the bridal boutique, hands trembling as I read the faded cursive one more time. My darling girl, if you're reading this on your wedding day, I've failed you. I'm about to walk down the aisle to marry a man I don't love, and I'm too much of a coward to stop it. Don't be like me. Don't let them choose your life. Run if you have to. I wish I had. In 2 weeks, I was supposed to marry James Montgomery III. And I was starting to think I'd made a terrible mistake. There are moments in life that feel like they are stitched together from dreams, fragile seams of silk and hope, so delicate that you're almost afraid to touch them. For Emma Chen, the weeks before her wedding lived inside that fragile place between reality and reverie. Her days were filled with the scent of peonies, the chatter of planners, the careful checking of lists. Everything shimmered with the soft golden promise of the future. And then, one small sound, a tear of fabric, barely audible, shattered it. The seamstress's studio sat at the end of a narrow cobblestone street, tucked between a florist and an antique bookshop. It always smelled faintly of lavender and starch, the kind of scent that clings to linen after years of love and labor. Afternoon sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains, turning floating dust motes into little constellations of gold. Emma had been there countless times over the past few months. Each visit was a slow ritual of transformation, a pin here, a stitch there, a layer of lace added or removed. The dress itself was a story in fabric, a 1950s gown found folded in a cedar chest at an estate sale upstate. She remembered that day clearly, the creak of the old woman's attic, the way the gown seemed to glow even beneath a thin film of dust. It had been love at first sight. "Are you sure you want something so old-fashioned?" her mother had asked gently when she'd brought it home. Emma had smiled then, a polite, careful smile, and said it felt right. What she didn't say was that she loved the history of it. She loved the idea that someone else had once stood in this very gown, trembling with the same anticipation she now felt. She wanted to carry that story forward, to be part of something that had already endured time. But time, she would soon learn, doesn't always tell its stories gently. The seamstress, Mrs. Lopez, was a patient woman in her 60s with silver hair and a habit of humming old ballads while she worked. That afternoon, she hummed softly as she adjusted the gown's hem, her fingers moving with the confidence of someone who'd spent decades conversing with fabric. Emma stood still on the pedestal, gazing at her reflection. The mirror stretched from floor to ceiling, its frame carved with roses that caught the light. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine the wedding day, the music swelling, James's face as she walked down the aisle, the murmur of guests turning into silence. Everything looked perfect. Everything was perfect. So why did it feel like she was playing a part? The thought flickered and vanished before she could name it. Mrs. Lopez's needle paused. She frowned slightly, then leaned closer, muttering under her breath. The hum stopped. Emma's gaze lifted. "Is something wrong?" The seamstress's brow furrowed. "I don't think so, dear. Just something odd here in the lining." Emma tilted her head, watching as Mrs. Lopez's hands traced the inside of the bodice. There was a faint sound, a tiny rip of old thread, and then something gave way. The seamstress's fingers slipped into a narrow slit in the fabric, and when she withdrew them, she was holding a small, yellowed envelope. The sight of it seemed to still the air. "What's that?" Emma asked softly. Mrs. Lopez blinked, turning it over in her hands. "A pocket," she murmured. "Hidden in the lining. I've seen a lot of dresses in my day, but I've never found one that kept a secret this long." She smiled faintly and offered the envelope to Emma. "Looks like your gown has a story of its own." The paper was brittle, its edges softened by time. Emma could see the faint marks of fingers that had once held it, the faded remains of wax that had sealed its flap. On the front, in slanted handwriting, there was a date. June 15, 1957. That was all. No name. No address. Just a fragment of time. Something fluttered in Emma's chest. She turned it over, feeling the weight of it, light, but strangely heavy with meaning. She'd always loved old things, but this felt different. This felt intimate, intrusive almost, like reading someone's diary. Maybe it's a love letter, the seamstress said, returning to her stitching. Wouldn't that be romantic? Emma smiled, though her fingers trembled slightly. Maybe. But something in her resisted the idea. The air around her felt charged, expectant, as though the dress itself was holding its breath. For a moment, she didn't move. The envelope lay across her palms, fragile as a leaf. Sunlight glowed through the thin paper, illuminating a few faint lines of ink. Her curiosity pulsed stronger than her hesitation. She slid a nail beneath the seal and gently broke it. The scent that escaped was faint, old paper, lavender, and something like dust and tears. Inside was a single folded page, lined and carefully written. Her heart thudded once. Twice. She unfolded it slowly. At the top, in graceful script, was the greeting. My darling girl. Her breath caught. She glanced at Mrs. Lopez, but the woman was lost in her work, humming again. The sound felt distant now, muffled under the rush of blood in Emma's ears. She continued reading. If you're reading this, it means you're about to marry. And I pray you're braver than I am. Because tomorrow, I will walk down the aisle to a man I do not love. Emma's throat tightened. Her eyes darted across the page, each sentence pulling her deeper. I love someone else. I have loved him quietly, fiercely, and without hope. But love doesn't seem to matter when the world expects something else of you. My parents say Robert will provide a good life. My friends say he's kind. Everyone says I should be happy. So tomorrow, I will smile and say yes. And in that moment, I will stop belonging to myself. A strange pressure built behind Emma's ribs, something between sorrow and recognition. She lowered the letter slightly, staring at her reflection in the mirror, the modern bride in an old dress, reading another woman's heartbreak across time. Outside, a breeze lifted the curtains. The hum of traffic seemed distant, unreal. Emma read on. My darling, if you are truly my daughter, and you are reading this one day, promise me this, don't let anyone choose your life for you. Not even me. The world will tell you what happiness should look like. It will dress it in lace and ceremony and applause. But if it doesn't feel like truth, don't wear it. Don't let their dreams suffocate your voice. Emma's vision blurred. She blinked hard, realizing her hands were trembling. It wasn't just the sadness of the words, it was the echo of them. The uncomfortable familiarity. She thought of James, the careful way he spoke, the way he made plans for her without asking if she agreed. He wasn't unkind, not at all. He was steady, dependable, admired by everyone who mattered. Her parents adored him. Her friends said she was lucky. She was lucky. Wasn't she? Mrs. Lopez's voice pulled her back. Everything all right, dear? Emma folded the letter quickly, hiding it as though it was something forbidden. Yes, she said too quickly. Just, surprised. The seamstress smiled. You never know what stories clothes carry. Sometimes I think they remember more than we do. Emma nodded absently. Her pulse still raced. The dress suddenly felt heavy on her shoulders, like it wasn't entirely hers anymore. She waited until Mrs. Lopez turned away, then slipped the letter into her purse. She told herself she'd throw it away later, it wasn't hers to keep. But a quiet voice inside whispered that she couldn't. That night, she couldn't sleep. The letter lay unfolded on her kitchen table, illuminated by the soft pool of a lamp. Outside, rain whispered against the windows. She read it again, slower this time, searching for meaning between the lines. The ink had bled in places, words faded almost to ghosts. Yet the emotion was sharp, almost alive. Who was Catherine? The name appeared once near the end, in small careful handwriting. Catherine. Emma typed it into her phone absently. Nothing obvious came up, no famous Catherine from that year, no scandal or story. Just silence. She leaned back in her chair, exhaling. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. It was absurd, she told herself. A forgotten letter from a stranger. That's all. But the words refused to leave her mind. Don't let anyone choose your life for you. It wasn't advice. It was a plea. And deep down, she recognized the kind of voice that writes a plea like that, someone who knew what it meant to surrender their freedom for the comfort of others. The next morning, Emma went through the motions. Breakfast with her mother, a phone call with the wedding planner, emails from work. On the surface, everything remained perfectly in place. But underneath, something had shifted. When James called that afternoon, his voice was warm and efficient, filled with checklists. "My parents confirmed the dinner for Friday," he said. "Can you make it by 7? "Of course," she said automatically. He continued, "And I finalized the seating arrangement. You don't mind sitting your cousin with my colleagues, right? She's quite chatty, it'll balance the table." "No, that's fine." Every word felt like she was moving through a script. She found herself studying the photo of them on her fridge, smiling, perfect, unblemished. But now, all she could think about was the handwriting from 1957, the ink that had faded but not vanished. When the call ended, she stood for a long time by the window, the letter's words echoing behind her ribs like a heartbeat she couldn't quiet. That evening, she returned to the seamstress's studio under the excuse of checking a fitting detail. The shop was quieter than usual, the radio murmured softly in the background. Mrs. Lopez looked up from her work. "Back so soon, dear?" Emma smiled, trying to sound casual. "I just couldn't stop thinking about that letter. Do you know where the dress came from before the estate sale?" The seamstress shook her head. "I only know what you told me. The seller mentioned it belonged to a woman named Catherine Moore. She passed years ago, I think." "Why? Was it something sad?" Emma hesitated. "Yes," she said softly. "But, important." Mrs. Lopez's gaze softened. "Then maybe it found you for a reason." The words landed heavier than they should have. Emma left soon after, the sound of the bell over the door following her into the fading light. At home, she placed the dress on her mannequin, the way a museum might display a relic. The fabric shimmered softly in the lamplight, innocent and haunting all at once. She imagined Catherine standing there decades earlier, a young woman in the same dress, heart pounding with the same mixture of fear and hope. Did she walk down the aisle anyway? Did she ever tell the man she didn't love him? Did she ever see the one she truly did? Emma reached out and brushed the fabric. It was smooth, cool beneath her fingertips, but the weight of it seemed almost alive. For the first time, she felt a pang of doubt so deep it startled her. What if this was a warning, not just a coincidence, not just history whispering, but fate giving her a second chance to listen? The thought lingered, unsettling and impossible to ignore. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Rain pressed softly against the windows again, the same rhythm as the night before. Emma sat down beside the dress, the letter spread before her like a confession. The handwriting shimmered faintly in the lamplight, and she could almost imagine Catherine's hand moving across the page, trembling but certain. There were no grand flourishes, no dramatic endings, just truth, quietly carved in ink. "Tomorrow, I will say yes. And in doing so, I will lose myself. But if someday my daughter reads this, maybe she will find what I couldn't, the courage to choose her own heart." Emma's breath hitched. A tear landed on the paper, darkening the faded line for a moment before disappearing. Somewhere in the distance, a clock struck midnight. The sound echoed through the empty house. Emma folded the letter carefully and held it against her chest, as though it might steady her heart. She didn't know yet what she was supposed to do, only that something had changed. In 2 weeks, she was meant to marry James. The invitations were sent, the venue paid for, the future mapped neatly out like a pressed flower. But now, beneath the quiet hum of the storm, she felt another path tugging at her, faint but insistent, like the whisper of silk between fingers. The past had reached out to her through a seam in a dress. And somewhere inside that fragile echo, she could already sense that her own life was about to unravel. The morning after the letter felt too bright. Sunlight poured through Emma's curtains as if the world hadn't noticed the weight that had settled inside her. The coffee machine hummed, the city stirred outside, and somewhere in the distance, a car horn blared, ordinary sounds, perfectly unbothered. Emma sat at the kitchen table, the letter folded beside her mug. Its edges had begun to curl, faint brown marks spreading like veins of age. She couldn't stop touching it, tracing its folds, reopening it, closing it again. It was like a wound she kept prodding to see if it still hurt. And it did. She had tried to shake the feeling off, the ghost of Catherine's voice whispering through her head, but every time she blinked, the words returned. Don't let anyone choose your life for you. She had always been good at following plans, other people's plans, especially. It had never felt like surrender. It had just felt safe. That word again. Safe. The very reason she'd fallen for James, or, perhaps more truthfully, the reason she'd convinced herself she had. Then, 3 years earlier. It had been a warm spring evening at her parents' garden party, the kind where laughter floated through the air like champagne bubbles and everyone seemed a little too polished to be real. Her mother had insisted she'd come. You'll love him, she'd said. James Turner. Lovely family. Brilliant career. The kind of man who knows what he wants. Emma had been tired that day, still nursing the sting of a creative project rejected at work, her hair tied back too loosely, her patience thinner than usual. But she went, because she always did what was expected. He was easy to spot, tall, clean-cut, surrounded by people who laughed too loudly at everything he said. There was a practiced ease about him, the kind of man who knew the right words for the right moments. When their mothers introduced them, he'd shaken her hand firmly and smiled in a way that felt both confident and calculating. So, Emma, he'd said, tilting his head just slightly, what is it you do? She told him she worked in marketing, that she liked photography on weekends, that she had a small rescue cat named Miso who hated everyone but her. He'd smiled, polite, intrigued, assessing. A creative type. That's refreshing. Later that night, when she told her mother he seemed nice, her mother had clasped her hands like someone who'd just heard a prophecy fulfilled. Nice. The first harmless word in a long chain that would come to define everything between them. James had been attentive. Predictable in the way that made people trust him. He never forgot to call. He remembered anniversaries, birthdays, the exact kind of wine she liked. He opened doors, sent flowers, planned dinners. He didn't make her heart race, but he made her feel chosen. And for a while, that felt close enough to love. Their relationship unfolded like a checklist of milestones. A comfortable rhythm of Sunday brunches, family holidays, movie nights, small talk that fit neatly into patterns. He always seemed to know what to do, which, paradoxically, meant she never needed to decide. When they first kissed, it had been after a long evening at the Turner family's summer house. Fireflies blinked over the lake, laughter drifted from the porch. He'd leaned in, and she'd felt calm. Not electrified, not undone, just steady. Like slipping into a warm bath. She told herself that comfort was love. That peace mattered more than fireworks. That maybe the movies had lied about what passion should feel like. And for a while, she believed it. In the present, Emma rinsed her cup and stared at the streaks of water sliding down the porcelain. Her reflection wavered in the kitchen window, tired eyes, hair undone, a faint crease between her brows that hadn't been there a year ago. She remembered the night James had proposed. It had been elegant, rehearsed, almost cinematic. A rooftop dinner, city lights, champagne. Her friends had cried when she showed them the video. Her mother had framed a photo of the moment and placed it in the living room. But what no one knew, what she'd never said out loud, was that when James had knelt and opened the box, her first feeling hadn't been joy. It had been fear. A fleeting, dizzying thought, is this really my life now? And then, as quickly as it came, she had smiled, because that was what one was supposed to do. Flashback, 1 year earlier. Do you ever think about doing something else? She had asked once, during a Sunday drive through the countryside. James had laughed softly, eyes on the road. Something else? Like what? I don't know, she said. Quitting everything. Traveling. Starting over somewhere new. He smiled indulgently. That's cute. But you'd hate it after a week without Wi-Fi. She laughed too, but it wasn't genuine. She felt small for even asking. The conversation drifted away, as all her questions eventually did. Back then, Emma had started noticing a subtle rhythm to their relationship, moments that seemed spontaneous but weren't. He always booked the same restaurant, always ordered for both of them, always steered conversations back to safe topics. When she tried to open up about her art, the photography project she'd been too afraid to pursue, he'd listen politely, then ask, "But does that really pay?" He wasn't cruel. He was practical. And practicality, she'd been told, was the bedrock of lasting love. So she swallowed the words that rose up, the protest that trembled in her throat. She smiled instead, because being agreeable kept everything peaceful. And peace was what she'd wanted. At least, that's what she thought. In the present, Emma found herself sitting in the dress again. She'd pulled it from the mannequin and slipped it on, just to feel its weight. The fabric whispered against her skin like memory. She looked at herself in the mirror, the woman who had everything planned, everything in place. And yet, staring back at her was a stranger with a question in her eyes. When did you stop belonging to yourself? The ring on her finger caught the light, and for the first time, she noticed it felt heavy. Flashback to 6 months before the wedding. It was the Turner family's annual holiday dinner. Laughter, fine china, the scent of roasted herbs and wine. Emma sat beside James at the long table while conversation swelled around them. His mother leaned over. "You'll make such a beautiful bride," she said warmly. "I always knew James would find someone grounded." Emma smiled, heat creeping up her neck. "Thank you." James squeezed her hand under the table, not affectionately, but as a silent cue. "See? This is good. This is what we wanted." And it was good. The house, the family, the laughter. Good in the way of perfect photographs. Beautiful but motionless. Later that night, as they drove home, Emma stared out the window at the passing lights. James reached for her hand again. "You were great tonight. Mom adores you." She smiled faintly. "That's nice. Is everything okay?" She hesitated. "Sometimes I just feel like..." But she couldn't finish the sentence. The words dissolved into the hum of the car. He glanced at her, concerned but not curious. "Like what?" "Never mind," she said quickly. "I'm just tired." He nodded, satisfied. "You've been busy. After the wedding, things will calm down." She'd wanted to tell him that the unease wasn't from busyness, it was from silence. From the part of her that kept shrinking each time she bit her tongue. But she'd smiled again, as always, and watched her reflection blur against the glass. In the days after finding Catherine's letter, that reflection haunted her. Every glance in a mirror felt like meeting the version of herself she'd been hiding from. She began to notice small cracks in the facade, moments she'd overlooked. The time she'd wanted to decorate their future apartment with her own artwork, and James had suggested something more neutral. The time she told him she wanted to keep her last name, and he'd laughed as though she were joking. The time she'd wanted to spend Christmas volunteering abroad, and he'd said, "Why would we leave when everything we need is right here?" Every memory now replayed with new color, sharper edges. And through them all, Catherine's words echoed like a second conscience. "Don't let anyone choose your life for you." That evening, Emma met her friend Leah for coffee. Leah was the kind of person who radiated authenticity, messy hair, loud laugh, paint smudges on her hands. They'd known each other since college, though their paths had drifted apart in recent years. "You look off," Leah said after a few minutes. "Wedding stress?" Emma hesitated, stirring her coffee. "Something like that." Leah leaned in. "You can tell me, you know. You always do that thing, the pretending thing." Emma smiled weakly. "What pretending thing?" "The one where you convince everyone, including yourself, that you're fine." Emma looked away. "I found something. In my wedding dress." Leah's brow furrowed. "Like what?" "A letter. From a woman who wore it before me. She wrote it to her daughter on her wedding day, a confession that she was marrying the wrong man." Leah blinked. "That's eerie." "It's more than that," Emma whispered. "It feels like she was talking to me." Leah studied her face for a long moment. "Do you think you're marrying the wrong man?" Emma didn't answer. She stared at her coffee until the surface stilled and her reflection looked like someone she didn't quite know. That night, James called again. He sounded cheerful, making plans for their honeymoon in Italy, listing itineraries, restaurants, museums. Emma murmured assent to everything. She couldn't tell if she was agreeing out of habit or exhaustion. When he said, "I can't wait to start our life together," she forced a smile he couldn't see. After the call, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The silence of the room pressed around her. She imagined Catherine lying in a similar bed decades earlier, staring into the same darkness, feeling the same quiet dread before her own wedding. The thought made her chest tighten. She reached for the letter on her nightstand, reading it again by the dim light of her phone. The ink seemed darker tonight, as though the words had grown bolder the more she resisted them. At the bottom, beneath Catherine's signature, Emma noticed something she hadn't before, a faint indentation, a second line pressed into the paper, barely visible. She angled it toward the light. It read, "He doesn't know what I've done." Emma froze. Her pulse quickened. What had Catherine done? Why hide this letter in the lining of a dress if not to keep a secret too heavy to speak? She sat up, the sheet slipping from her shoulders. Outside, a train horn echoed in the distance, lonely and hollow. She whispered the words aloud, her voice trembling, "He doesn't know what I've done." And in that instant, she realized she didn't fully know herself, either. Not the woman who had said yes, not the woman everyone saw, not the woman she was becoming under the weight of another's expectations. The letter wasn't just haunting her. It was unraveling her. The clock on her bedside table read 2:47 a.m. She folded the paper back along its ancient creases and placed it gently on the nightstand. Her reflection in the dark window looked pale, distant, like someone standing on the edge of a life she no longer recognized. For the first time, a quiet, dangerous thought took shape in her mind. What if I don't go through with it? The question hung in the air like thunder before a storm. And somewhere deep inside, beneath layers of silk, expectation, and silence, something in Emma began to wake. For 3 nights straight, Emma didn't sleep properly. Not from stress, at least, not the kind everyone could see, but from the quiet noise inside her head, the looping echo of words written more than half a century ago. "Don't let anyone choose your life for you. He doesn't know what I've done." The sentences folded over themselves like whispers in a dark room, refusing to let her rest. Even in daylight, they trailed behind her, in the sound of her phone buzzing with wedding updates, in the way her mother's voice rose with excitement, in every innocent question that now felt like a test. Her mother's dining table had become wedding planning headquarters. Lists, catalogs, color swatches, flowers in watercolor shades of ivory and blush sprawled across the surface like battle plans for a future that had already been decided. "Isn't this gorgeous?" her mother said, holding up a brochure for table linens. "The silk blend feels divine. It'll photograph beautifully." Beside her, James's mother, impeccably dressed, composed even on a Tuesday morning, nodded approvingly. Classic elegance never goes out of style. Emma sat between them, stirring tea that had long gone cold. "It's beautiful," she murmured, though she hadn't really looked. Her mother turned to her. "You're very quiet today. Everything okay, sweetheart?" Emma smiled, the kind of smile that felt like a reflex. "Just tired." "Well, we're nearly there," her mother said brightly. "Only 2 weeks. Imagine, soon you'll be Mrs. Turner." The words landed with a weight she hadn't expected. Mrs. Turner. She'd practiced signing it once, months ago, on a napkin. At the time, it had felt romantic. Now it felt like erasure. James's mother clasped her hands. "You're going to make my son so happy. He's been glowing these past few months. You bring out the best in him." Emma nodded again. She wondered, privately, what part of herself she brought out, and whether anyone would notice if she wasn't glowing too. The conversation moved briskly, seating charts, flower arrangements, vows, photographers. Each suggestion led itself atop the last, an unstoppable current of enthusiasm. Emma drifted somewhere outside it, her mind half anchored to the letter tucked safely in a box under her bed. At one point, her mother looked up. "Oh, James mentioned you were choosing a reading for the ceremony. Did you decide?" Emma hesitated. "I was thinking something simple. Maybe a poem about honesty." James's mother laughed softly. "Honesty? That's unusual for a wedding reading." Her mother smiled indulgently. "We don't want anything too heavy, darling. People cry enough as it is. Emma felt the corners of her mouth lift automatically, though her throat tightened. Right. Of course. The talk swept on, but her mind lingered on that word, honesty. It sounded like rebellion now, like something dangerous. Later, while the two women debated floral budgets, Emma slipped outside to the balcony. The afternoon air carried the faint hum of the city and the scent of jasmine from a neighbor's garden. She closed her eyes, breathing in the quiet. For a moment, she could almost hear Catherine's voice again, soft and steady as the rustle of silk. She told herself she wouldn't think about it today. But it was impossible not to. Every smile felt like a costume. Every conversation about the wedding felt like someone else's script. She tried to remember when she'd last felt truly excited, not just about the dress or the party, but about the life waiting beyond it. Nothing came. The door slid open behind her. Hiding? Emma turned. It was James, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, his usual unshakable calm. Just getting some air, she said. He joined her at the railing. Mom said you two made good progress. She's thrilled about the menu. She always is, Emma said softly. He smiled. You've barely said 2 words all week. Nerves? Maybe. He slid an arm around her waist. Don't overthink it. Everything's perfect. You'll see. She forced a small laugh. Perfect on paper. He chuckled. That's what counts, isn't it? She looked up at him then, really looked. His features were handsome, familiar, reassuring. Yet something in that moment felt unbearably distant. Yeah, she said quietly. That's what counts. That night, Emma sat on her bedroom floor, the letterbox open before her. She unfolded Catherine's note for what must have been the 20th time. Each time she read it, the words shifted slightly in meaning. At first, they had felt like a confession. Then a warning. Now, they felt like a mirror. She ran her fingers along the last line, the faint indentation that had changed everything. He doesn't know what I've done. What had Catherine done? Had she written another letter? Hidden another secret? The thought stirred something irrational in her, a need to know, to understand. Because if she could understand Catherine's story, maybe she could understand her own. She refolded the paper carefully and slid it into a smaller envelope, sealing it with tape. Then she placed it at the very back of her wardrobe, behind a stack of sweaters. Out of sight. But even hidden, it felt alive. Days blurred together. Emma attended tastings, fittings, final meetings. Each event felt like acting in a play she hadn't auditioned for. Her mother's voice on the phone was always full of brightness. The photographer says he'll get that candid, natural look you wanted. You'll adore the photos. James's mother sent her spreadsheets, guest lists, toasts, timelines. Organization, she wrote, is the key to serenity. Emma found herself smiling less in photos. Even her laughter sounded rehearsed, shaped by politeness. When she tried to talk to James about taking a break, just a few days apart, to breathe, she'd said, he'd frowned. A break? In the middle of wedding prep. I just meant time to think, she'd clarified, but the look on his face had made her retreat. You're just anxious, he'd said kindly, and kissed her forehead. You'll feel better once we're married. And maybe that was the worst part, how gentle he was, how sure, how reasonable. It left her nowhere to place the chaos building inside. The following weekend, the families gathered for a rehearsal dinner tasting. The restaurant was elegant, candlelight flickering across white tablecloths. Everyone laughed easily. Wine flowed. Plans were finalized. Emma smiled through it all. Her mother clinked glasses with James's father. Her own father told stories that made everyone laugh. It was a picture-perfect evening, the kind that would look flawless on social media, glowing with captioned happiness. But beneath the laughter, Emma felt a hollow thrum in her chest. At one point, James's mother raised her glass. To Emma, she said warmly. To the woman who will soon make our family complete. Everyone cheered. Emma smiled. And yet, deep down, something in her recoiled. The phrase "make our family complete" sounded less like love and more like acquisition. As if she were being added to a collection. After dinner, her mother linked arms with her on the way to the car. "Wasn't that wonderful? You're so lucky, darling. Everything's falling into place." Emma hesitated. The air was thick with the scent of rain. "Mom," she said finally. Her mother glanced at her. "Him? What if I'm not ready?" Her mother laughed softly, squeezing her arm. "Of course you're ready. You've been planning for months." "No, I mean, what if I'm not sure?" The laughter faded. "Not sure about what?" "The wedding, James. All of it." Her mother stopped walking. "Emma." Her tone sharpened slightly. "You're just nervous. Every bride gets cold feet." "I'm not nervous, I'm—" "Sweetheart," her mother interrupted, voice softening but firm. "You've built a beautiful life. James adores you. You've worked so hard for this. Don't throw it away over a few jitters." Emma's chest constricted. "But what if it's more than jitters?" Her mother exhaled, half smiling, half pleading. "Darling, everyone has doubts. That's what love is, choosing someone despite them. Now, stop overthinking and enjoy this moment. You're about to start the rest of your life." She kissed Emma's cheek and slipped into the car, leaving her alone under the streetlight. Emma stood there for a long time, the sound of rain beginning to fall. The world around her felt heavy with expectation, like a stage waiting for her to hit her mark. She wanted to scream, to tell someone about the letter, about the strange fear that it had infected her with. But who would believe her? Later that night, at home, she pulled the letter from the wardrobe again. She read it once more, the paper trembling in her hands. For the first time, she whispered Catherine's name aloud. "Who were you?" The house gave no answer. On impulse, she searched online again, typing Catherine Moore 1957 Wedding Robert, and scrolled through grainy archives, obituary pages, black and white photographs of smiling couples who all looked the same. Nothing. Just as she was about to close her laptop, an image caught her eye, a newspaper clipping from 1958. "Local woman Catherine Moore Turner welcomes baby girl." Emma's breath caught. Turner. The same last name as James. She clicked the article open. The text was brief, a birth announcement. No photo. No details beyond that. Her pulse quickened. Coincidence? Surely. Turner was a common name. But still, the connection jolted her. She looked again at the date on the letter. June 15, 1957. Catherine had been married exactly 1 year before giving birth. And now, in 2025, Emma Chen was preparing to marry another Turner. The room suddenly felt colder. She shut the laptop, heart pounding. It was ridiculous, she told herself. Coincidence, nothing more. But even as she tried to reason it away, the edges of reality blurred. What if it wasn't coincidence? What if there was some thread, unseen, persistent, weaving their stories together? She slid the letter back into its envelope and placed it under her pillow, as though proximity could calm her. It didn't. Hours later, she was still awake when her phone buzzed, a message from James. "Can't sleep. Thinking about you. 2 weeks, M." Then everything begins. She stared at the text, thumb hovering over the reply button. Finally, she typed. "Yeah. Everything begins." But before she hit send, she looked at the words again. They didn't feel true. She deleted the message. Turned off the phone. In the darkness, her fingers brushed the edge of the letter beneath her pillow. And just before sleep finally claimed her, she thought she heard something. A whisper, faint and far away, like a voice carried through silk. Not Catherine's words this time. Something new. "It's happening again." Emma sat upright, heart hammering. The room was empty. Silent. But the letter felt warm beneath her hand. Morning came with the false brightness of a world pretending everything was fine. Emma stood in her kitchen, pouring coffee she wouldn't drink, staring at nothing in particular. The letter lay folded on the counter beside her phone like an accusation she couldn't put away. For 3 days, she had managed to act normal, or close enough. Emails answered. Appointments kept. Wedding decisions approved with smiles that never quite reached her eyes. But the questions pulsed underneath the surface, constant and unrelenting. Who was Catherine Moore Turner? Why had her name led to a dead end? And why did Emma feel as if she'd stumbled into a story that had been waiting for her all along? The search begins. That afternoon, while James was at work and her mother believed she was meeting the florist, Emma drove across town to the antique dealer who had handled the estate sale where she'd found the dress. The shop smelled of wood polish and dust, the perfume of old things remembering too much. Behind the counter, a woman with half-moon glasses looked up from a ledger. "Can I help you?" Emma hesitated. "I bought a wedding dress from your estate sale last month. 1950s, ivory lace. I was wondering if you still have the record of the property it came from." The woman adjusted her glasses. "The Moore estate, I think. Lovely house, sold to developers now. Let's see." She flipped through a thick binder, pages whispering like secrets. "Yes. Catherine Whitmore Moore. Died 1978. Husband, Robert. Daughter named Margaret. Whitmore." The middle name caught Emma's attention like a snag in fabric. "Whitmore. That's what it says. Why, something wrong?" "No," Emma said quickly. "I just wanted to know who owned it before." The woman smiled faintly. "You're not the first bride to ask. There's something romantic about wearing another woman's history." Romantic. Emma forced a nod, thanked her, and left, the word echoing in her head like irony. That night, she sat at her laptop long after the city had gone quiet. The house was dark except for the cold glow of the screen and the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. She typed Catherine Whitmore Moore 1957 wedding into the search bar. Hundreds of results, family genealogy sites, newspaper archives, digitized obituaries. Most were noise, dead ends. She clicked deeper. Her eyes blurred, her coffee cooled, and hours slipped past unnoticed. At 1:37 a.m., she found a fragment, a scanned Society page clipping from the New York Chronicle, dated June 17, 1957. "Miss Catherine Whitmore of Charleston married Robert Moore of Boston this weekend in a ceremony at St. Helena's Cathedral. The bride wore a gown of French lace, heirloom pearls, and carried white roses. The couple will reside in Cambridge." Emma stared at the grainy photograph beside the text. The image was faint, blurred by decades of cheap ink, but she could make out the outline of the dress, the same scalloped lace sleeves, the same sweep of fabric. Her dress. Her stomach tightened. It felt like staring into a mirror warped by time. Two brides, one dress, both frozen in moments that looked perfect and felt wrong. The next morning, James noticed. "You're quiet again," he said over breakfast. He was scrolling through his phone, half listening. "Mom wants to finalize the guest seating. Can you send her your family list today?" Emma nodded absently. James looked up. "Emma?" She blinked, realizing she'd been staring at the same untouched toast for 5 minutes. "Sorry." "What?" He frowned. "You okay?" "Fine. Just didn't sleep." "You've been saying that all week." "I said I'm fine, James." He studied her for a moment, the way her shoulders curved inward, the faint shadows beneath her eyes. Then he softened. "You're overworking yourself. Let's take a day off from wedding stuff. Just us. Dinner, a movie?" "That sounds nice," she said automatically. But even as she said it, she knew she wouldn't be able to stop. At work, she barely made it through the morning meeting. The numbers on the slides blurred, words floated past her like static. At lunch, she retreated to the break room with her laptop and reopened her search tabs. Whitmore. She followed the name backward through genealogical records, parents, birth announcements, census forms. And then, a hit. A scanned marriage license, Catherine Lillian Whitmore and Robert James Moore. Her eyes froze on the groom's middle name. James. Coincidence? It had to be. Still, something crawled along her spine. She dug further. Birth certificates, property deeds, archived wills. Every document built a faint outline of a life that had once been vivid and now was reduced to ink and paper. Robert Moore, corporate lawyer, Boston firm. Catherine Whitmore Moore, socialite, charity volunteer, deceased 1978. Margaret Moore, born 1958. Emma clicked on the daughter's record. Margaret L. Moore. Later references listed her as Margaret L. Turner. Emma's breath hitched. Turner. The same name as James. Her pulse quickened. It could still be coincidence. There were thousands of Turners. Millions. But she couldn't ignore the way the letters seemed to rearrange themselves into a message: "You're closer than you think." That evening, she met James for dinner at a small Italian place near their apartment. The candlelight flickered warmly, glasses chimed, conversation hummed around them. Everything about it was normal. Too normal. "So," James said, smiling, "Mom's found a string quartet for the ceremony. You'll love them." Emma stirred her pasta, appetite gone. He leaned forward. "What's wrong?" She hesitated. "Do you know much about your family history?" He laughed. "History? Not really. Why?" "Just curious. Where did your family come from originally?" "Boston," he said. "My grandparents moved there in the 50s, I think." Her fork froze midair. "The 50s?" He nodded. "Yeah. Grandpa Robert and Grandma Margaret." "Why?" Her throat went dry. "Robert. Margaret. The names from the records. Catherine's husband. Catherine's daughter." Her heart hammered so loudly she barely heard herself say, "Nothing. Just wondering." James smiled, oblivious. "You're adorable when you overthink." She forced a laugh, but her hands trembled under the table. That night, she couldn't breathe. The air in the apartment felt too close, too heavy. James slept peacefully beside her, one arm draped over her waist. She stared at the ceiling, every nerve awake. Robert Moore. Margaret Turner. James Turner. The line connected perfectly. Her fiancé wasn't just some distant echo of the story, he was part of it. Catherine Whitmore's family. The man she was about to marry was the grandson of the man Catherine had said she didn't love. Emma slipped quietly out of bed and padded into the living room. The dress hung in its garment bag near the window, ghost white in the moonlight. She unzipped it slowly. The fabric shimmered faintly, innocent and damning. Was it possible that fate could travel through fabric? That some stories refused to die until they were finished? She touched the lace sleeve, and for an instant, she swore she felt warmth, as if someone had just worn it. The next morning, while James was in the shower, she returned to the search results. Her hands shook as she typed, "Catherine Whitmore Moore Death 1978 Cause." It took a moment to load. Then the page appeared. Mrs. Catherine Moore, 44, was found deceased in her home on May 9, 1978. Authorities ruled it an accident due to carbon monoxide poisoning caused by a faulty heater. Survived by husband Robert Moore and daughter Margaret Turner. Accident. But Emma had read enough obituaries to know how often that word was used to mask something else. A chill crept over her skin. She clicked back to the wedding photo. The bride's face, blurred but visible, seemed almost alive now, eyes wide beneath the veil. "He doesn't know what I've done." The phrase looped in her head until she could hardly breathe. "Em?" She jumped. James stood in the doorway, hair damp, towel slung over his shoulders. "You're up early," he said. She snapped her laptop shut. "Couldn't sleep." He grinned. "You and your late-night research again. Planning something for the honeymoon?" "Something like that." He kissed her forehead. "You worry too much. Everything's going to be perfect." As he walked away, she opened the laptop again, staring at the faint reflection of his retreating figure in the screen. Perfect. The word had begun to sound like a threat. All day, her mind replayed what she'd found. The connections twisted tighter, forming something that looked less like coincidence and more like design. Catherine Whitmore Moore. Robert Moore. Margaret Turner. James Turner. A lineage built on silence. The dress wasn't just a relic of regret, it was a thread running straight into her own life. She imagined Catherine's voice again, trembling yet certain, "Don't let anyone choose your life for you." Had she hidden the letter as a warning, knowing someday it might find the next woman about to make the same mistake? Emma's pulse raced. She needed to know more. She needed proof. That evening, after James left for a late meeting, Emma dialed the antique dealer again. "Hi, this is Emma Chen. I bought that wedding dress from the Moore estate." "Oh yes," the woman said pleasantly. "Did it fit well?" "It did, thank you. I just wondered, do you know where the items from that estate came from before they were sold? Any contact listed?" "Let me check." There was the sound of papers rustling. "Yes, it says the sale was arranged by a Mrs. Margaret Hollis, the daughter, I believe. She lives just outside the city now. Lovely woman." Emma's heart stopped for a beat. "Do you have an address?" "I can't give it out officially," the woman said apologetically. "But she sometimes volunteers at the Willow Hill Retirement Center. You might find her there." "Thank you," Emma whispered. She hung up, staring at her reflection in the dark screen. Margaret Hollis. Catherine's daughter. Alive. Nearby. The same daughter the letter had been written to. That night, unable to resist, Emma opened the garment bag again. She reached into the pocket where the letter had been found, fingers grazing the seam. Something crinkled. She froze. Reaching deeper, she pulled out a thin, folded photograph, so aged it nearly fell apart in her hands. 3 people stood in front of a white house. Catherine, unmistakable in her wedding gown. Robert beside her. And a little girl, maybe 5 years old, clutching a small toy rabbit. Emma turned the photo over. Scrawled on the back, faint but legible. "For Margaret, so you never forget the truth." Her breath caught. The room seemed to tilt. Before she could process what she was holding, her phone buzzed on the counter. A message from James. "We need to talk. Found something I think you should see." Emma stared at the screen, the photograph trembling in her hand. Her pulse thundered. Was he talking about wedding plans, or had he found what she had been hiding? The 2 discoveries hung in the air, heavy and inevitable, like storm clouds ready to break. By the time morning light crept through the blinds, Emma already knew the day would start wrong. The phone message from James still glowed on her screen. "We need to talk. Found something I think you should see." She'd read it a dozen times before deleting it, as if that could erase the weight of it. But tension doesn't vanish. It only hides, waiting for the right spark. The spark came over breakfast. It always did, in the smallest ways, the way he buttered toast methodically, the way he folded the paper just so. "Did you confirm the florist?" James asked, scrolling through his phone. "I thought you were doing that," she said, rinsing her cup. He glanced up. "I asked you last night." "No, you didn't." "I did." The words were harmless, but they hung sharp in the air. Emma dried her hands slowly. "Maybe I missed it." "You've been missing a lot lately." His voice was calm, too calm. "I don't know where your head's been, but it's not here. You've barely looked at me all week." She turned, stung by the quiet accusation. "I'm just tired, James. Everyone keeps telling me what I should be doing. Maybe I just need a minute to breathe." He sighed, setting his phone down. "Emma, this isn't like you. The wedding's in less than 2 weeks, and you're acting like..." "Like what?" she snapped. "Like you don't even want this." The silence that followed was heavier than shouting. He reached for her hand, his expression softening. "I just don't want you to panic over nothing." She pulled her hand back. "I'm not panicking." "Then what are you doing?" The question lingered unanswered. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "Because the truth, I think I'm living inside someone else's life, would sound insane." Instead, she whispered, "I just need to clear my head." He nodded slowly, mistaking withdrawal for calm. "Good. Maybe go see your mom today. She always centers you." Emma hesitated, then forced a smile. "Yeah. I'll do that." She picked up her bag, keys, and phone. Her pulse raced as she left the apartment, the lie still warm on her tongue. She wasn't going to her mother's. She was going back to the antique shop. The thought both thrilled and frightened her, this secret rebellion, this small betrayal. But the truth was pulling at her now, thread by thread, and she couldn't stop even if she wanted to. The bell above the door chimed softly as Emma stepped inside. The same scent, lavender and old wood, met her like an echo from another life. The shopkeeper looked up, surprised. Back again, dear? Don't tell me the dress doesn't fit. It fits, Emma said quickly. Perfectly. Then what brings you here? Emma hesitated. She hadn't planned what to say. Actually, I'm trying to learn more about the woman who owned it before me, Catherine Whitmore Moore. Recognition flickered in the woman's eyes. Ah, yes. The Moore estate. Such a tragedy, that family. Emma's heart skipped. Tragedy? The woman adjusted her glasses, lowering her voice as if afraid the walls might listen. Well, her husband died not long after she did. Their daughter sold everything. People said the house was cursed. Nonsense, of course, but that's how stories go. Emma swallowed. Do you know if Catherine had any other family? Siblings, maybe? Not that I recall. But the sale was managed by her daughter, Margaret. Lovely woman, quiet, polite. She didn't want to talk much about her parents. The same name. The same lead. Emma nodded, pulse thudding. Do you still have the contact information? The shopkeeper frowned. I shouldn't give that out, dear. Privacy laws and all that. Please, Emma said softly. It's important. I think I might be connected to her family somehow. That last line wasn't entirely a lie, and it did the trick. The woman hesitated, then scribbled something on a scrap of receipt paper and slid it across the counter. Don't tell anyone I gave you this. Emma looked down. A name. Margaret Hollis. And an address, Willow Hill Retirement Center. Her stomach fluttered. The same lead confirmed. She folded the paper and tucked it deep into her bag, a secret heartbeat against her side. As she turned to leave, the woman called after her. Oh, one more thing. Emma froze. Yes? The dress, you said you found something in it before? Emma stiffened. A letter. The woman nodded. That dress came with stories, you know. People whispered that Catherine sewed something else into it. Jewelry, maybe. Or other things. Emma's throat went dry. Other things? Letters, photographs. Memories she couldn't bear to throw away. The woman smiled faintly. Old clothes, remember. Be careful what you ask them to tell you. Outside, the day had dimmed to a gray that promised rain. Emma walked quickly to her car, heart hammering. Her phone buzzed, James again. She hesitated, then answered. Hey, he said, voice clipped. Did you make it to your mom's? Yes, she lied. We're just talking about flowers. You sound out of breath. I walked here. He chuckled, the sound not entirely kind. You don't walk anywhere, Em. She forced a laugh. Maybe I'm trying something new. A pause. Then, gently, you sure everything's okay? Everything's fine. It wasn't, and he could probably hear it. But she hung up before he could ask more. Rain began to fall as she started the engine, the rhythmic drumming matching her heartbeat. Back home, Emma spread the new scrap of paper on her desk. The handwriting was neat, unassuming, yet it felt like a key. Willow Hill Retirement Center. Margaret Hollis. The daughter. The one Catherine had written to. The one who might know what he doesn't know what I've done truly meant. Her thoughts raced. She imagined walking into that quiet place, introducing herself, seeing Margaret's face as she mentioned the dress. Would she be angry? Relieved? Would she even believe Emma's story? And then another thought, darker, colder, crept in. What if Margaret knew exactly who James was? What if she'd been waiting for someone to come asking about the dress? Emma pulled the photo she'd found from her drawer. The one of Catherine, Robert, and the little girl, Margaret. Their eyes stared back at her through faded sepia, frozen between truth and lie. The handwriting on the back still haunted her. For Margaret, so you never forget the truth. She whispered the words aloud. What truth? Her pulse quickened. She picked up her laptop, determined to search again, but stopped halfway. Her phone buzzed once more, James again. A text this time. You didn't go to your mom's. I called her. Her breath caught. Another buzz followed. "Where are you, Emma?" Her fingers trembled. She typed back. "Out running errands." "Why are you checking up on me?" No reply. She stared at the screen, heart pounding. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. When she returned home an hour later, James was waiting by the window, phone in hand. His expression wasn't angry, but something worse, patient, controlled. "Long day at your mom's?" he asked quietly. Emma froze. "James?" "She called," he said, cutting her off. "Said she hasn't seen you in days." Her throat tightened. "I just needed to clear my head." "By lying to me?" The words hit hard because they were true. She looked away. "I didn't want to argue." "Then why are we arguing now?" The silence stretched. Finally, he sighed. "I don't know what's going on with you, but this, sneaking around, keeping secrets, it's not you." Emma swallowed. "Maybe you don't know me as well as you think." His jaw tensed. "Then help me understand." She opened her mouth, desperate to tell him everything. The letter, the photograph, the names that tied their families together. But something stopped her. Fear, maybe. Or the unshakable sense that once she said it aloud, nothing could ever return to normal. So she said the one thing she knew would end the conversation. "I'm fine, James. I just need space." He stared at her for a long time. Then he nodded slowly. "Fine. But I'm not going to watch you spiral over nothing." He walked past her, leaving the scent of his cologne and something sharper, disappointment. That night, Emma sat alone on the couch, the letter open again, the rain beating against the glass like an impatient hand. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello?" A woman's voice, faint but clear. "Is this Emma Chen?" "Yes." A pause, heavy with years. "My name is Margaret Hollis," the voice said. "I think you have something that belongs to my mother." Emma's breath caught. "How did you?" But the line clicked dead. The phone screen went black, leaving only her reflection staring back, pale, wide-eyed, clutching the ghost of someone else's story. The letter lay open beside her. Outside, lightning split the sky. And in the silence that followed, Emma realized the truth was no longer something she was chasing. It was coming for her. The rain hadn't stopped since the call. All through the night, thunder moved restlessly across the sky, as if echoing the noise inside Emma's chest. By morning, the city felt rinsed and hollow, a pale world of puddles and reflection. Margaret Hollis. The voice had been calm but urgent, old yet sharp enough to slice through Emma's denial. "I think you have something that belongs to my mother." She had replayed that sentence 100 times before dawn. It was both an invitation and a warning. By noon, Emma found herself standing in front of the local library, a red brick building that smelled of dust, rain, and forgotten stories. She told herself she was just looking for context. That this wasn't an obsession, just research. But the truth was simpler, she couldn't breathe until she knew everything. The librarian, a gentle woman with ink-stained fingers, directed her to the archives room. "We've got microfilm reels going back to the 50s, she said. "Help yourself." The room was quiet, heavy with the stillness of pages that hadn't been touched in years. Emma sat at a table under the hum of fluorescent light, scrolling through old editions of the New York Chronicle. The dates blurred past, 1957, June, the week of Catherine's wedding. There it was. The page unfurled across the screen in black and white. "Society Wedding Unites Whitmore and More." Her pulse quickened as she leaned closer. A grainy photograph took up half the column, Catherine, radiant in her lace gown, her hand resting on Robert's arm. The very same gown now hanging in Emma's closet. Even through the fog of time, the image felt alive. Catherine's smile was poised and perfect, but her eyes betrayed her. They weren't soft with love, they were searching. Haunted. Emma swallowed hard. The caption beneath the picture read, "The bride, Miss Catherine Whitmore, wore a gown of French lace and carried white roses, a family tradition. The couple will honeymoon in Boston before taking residence at their new home on Ashbury Lane." Ashbury Lane. Another breadcrumb. She scribbled the address in her notebook. The librarian looked up as she hurried past the front desk. "Find what you were looking for?" "Not yet," Emma said breathlessly, "but I'm getting closer." Outside, clouds gathered again, turning the afternoon dim. She typed Ashbury Lane into her phone, and there it was. A quiet residential street less than 30 minutes away. Without thinking, she started the car. The drive blurred past in a mix of wet roads and pounding heartbeats. She half expected to arrive and find the street gone, erased by time. But it was still there, lined with trimmed hedges and elegant houses, each one wearing its history in different shades of decay. Number 47 Ashbury Lane stood at the end, an old colonial with peeling paint and windows clouded by age. A for sale sign leaned crooked in the yard. Emma parked across the street and stared at it. Through the rain-smeared windshield, the house looked lifeless. But somewhere behind those windows, a life had once imploded. The same house from the newspaper photo. The same address from the wedding announcement. And maybe, the same place where Catherine had written her final letter. She didn't go inside, not yet. The house was locked and empty, and even from a distance, it felt heavy with unspoken things. Instead, she returned to the library that evening, unable to stop herself. She wanted more evidence, more truth. The librarian raised an eyebrow when Emma appeared again, hair damp, coat dripping. "Back so soon?" "I need the obituaries," Emma said quietly. "From 1978. The reels whirred again, spitting out lines of grainy text until she found it. Mrs. Catherine Moore, 44, found deceased in her home due to a gas leak. Authorities confirmed accidental cause. Survived by her husband, Robert Moore, and daughter, Margaret Turner. A small photo accompanied the obituary, Catherine again, older now, her beauty dimmed but her eyes unchanged. Still haunted. Still searching. Emma traced the face on the screen with her finger. "What happened to you?" she whispered. She turned to the next column. Directly beside Catherine's obituary was another clipping from just a year later. Robert Moore, 48, prominent attorney, dies suddenly in automobile collision. Leaves behind daughter, Mrs. Margaret Turner. Her breath caught. Catherine's husband. Dead within a year of her. 2 accidents, a year apart. Coincidence, perhaps. But Emma no longer believed in coincidences. She printed both clippings, the sound of the machine echoing like thunder in the silence. It was late by the time she reached her car. The sky was black, rain coming down harder now. She tossed the papers onto the passenger seat, but one line caught her eye. The name of the lawyer who had represented the estate after Robert's death. James Turner, Esquire. The words hit her like a jolt of electricity. James Turner. Her James Turner. Her heart pounded. She read it again, desperate for a mistake, an alternate explanation. But the letters didn't change. It couldn't be him, obviously, the dates didn't match. But it could be his grandfather. Her fiancé was named after the same man who'd handled the Moore estate, the same man whose family was now connected to hers through the dress, through the letter, through history itself. A lineage of lawyers. Of Turners. Of quiet, reasonable men. The coincidence folded into something that felt less like chance and more like fate tightening its noose. When she arrived home, the apartment was dim. James sat on the couch, laptop open, a glass of wine untouched beside him. "You didn't answer your phone," he said evenly. "I was out." "Where?" She hesitated. "Library." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Since when do you go to the library after dark?" "Since now," she said, trying to sound calm. He studied her. "You're keeping things from me again." "I just needed space." "To do what?" "Chase ghosts." The word struck hard. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You've been distracted, paranoid. You flinch every time I mention the wedding. You think I don't notice." She swallowed, voice trembling. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me." She couldn't. Not yet. The clippings, the photo, the letter, all of it felt too fragile, too unreal to survive his rational gaze. So she lied again. It's just stress. I'm fine. James stared at her for a long time, then nodded slowly. Okay. But whatever this is, it needs to stop before it ruins everything. He left the room, footsteps fading. Emma stood frozen, hands still gripping her bag, the bag that held the evidence he couldn't see. Hours later, when she was sure James was asleep, Emma spread the newspaper clippings on the table. Catherine's wedding photo. Her obituary. Robert's obituary. The lawyer's name, James Turner. The names circled one another like pieces of a curse, repeating across generations. She reached for her notebook and began writing. 1957, Catherine marries Robert Moore. 1958, Margaret born. 1978, Catherine dies, accident. 1979, Robert dies, accident. 1979, estate handled by James Turner, attorney. 2025, Emma Chen engaged to James Turner, grandson. Her handwriting shook. Somewhere beneath those dates, she could feel the outline of something darker, the shape of a secret too heavy for paper. She stared at the old photo again, eyes tracing the bride's face. That expression, half smile, half plea. And for a moment, she imagined Catherine looking straight at her through time. Her phone buzzed, startling her. A new message. Unknown number again. If you want to know the truth about Catherine, come to Willow Hill tomorrow. Don't tell anyone. No name. No signature. Just that. Her fingers trembled as she reread it. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. The dress hanging in the corner shifted slightly, as though stirred by an invisible hand. Emma's pulse quickened. Was it Margaret? Or someone else entirely? She typed a single reply. Who is this? No response. The screen dimmed, leaving her face reflected in the glass, pale, uncertain, framed by shadows. Behind her, the dress swayed again, whispering softly against the fabric of time. And for the first time, Emma wondered if Catherine's story had ever really ended, or if it was just beginning again through her.